Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Pretty Suited Podcast. I am your host, Lauren A. So much has happened since the last time we spoke. I did a quick little hiatus. Hiatus. Anyways, I've been gone for a minute just because I have been so busy with some things in my personal life, in my professional life, actually. I am happy to announce that I am officially certified in professional development. I recently took a certification exam last week. I have been studying nonstop. Late nights, coffee shop. And it reminded me of, almost like me getting my master's, like just being in school and working full time. It's not for the faint of heart. But thankfully, I only had to do it for about 3 weeks. I could have done it longer, but I did kind of procrastinate a little bit. But anyway, that means that basically I have been awarded the opportunity to really help people develop in their careers. It goes far beyond just getting a paycheck. And while that may be a goal for a lot of people, just really growing and learning and climbing up the ladder and just building those personal skills so that way it takes you pretty far. So I'm happy about that. I'm so happy about that. I've been celebrating all weekend since I got the certification. So yeah, I just needed that break to be able to get my priorities in order. And I'm excited about what's coming next. But anyway, this week I just wanted to talk to you guys about an album that I have been patiently waiting to listen to just because I'm such a huge fan. And I just understand that he is a mood, he is a time, he is a literally a snapshot of an era of mine. We won't speak too much about it because I had a time, but Brent Faiyaz has been a artist that I have been listening to for a very long time, really since his Sonder days. And, I've just been a huge fan of how he just, makes music. I mean, people have made the arguments over the years how he isn't necessarily a traditional R&B type of singer. Like, you're not going to get full blown, Tyrese or Joe vibes, no, not in the traditional R&B style, but Brent has his own vibe. Brent has his own type of sound that really was innovative, and it really was a whole moment, especially if we're talking about the 2018 2020 era Brent. Like, that was a time. Like, don't get it twisted. He got me through a lot of COVID, especially with his album or his mixtape, F the World. Like, that was my mixtape. I played that literally every day on the way to work. So yeah, just Brent puts you in a different mood, and he's largely known for, I mean, we all know that if you're a Brent Faiyaz fan, if you were a Sonder fan, you are very familiar with their content, and that content is predominantly, some would say a little bit toxic, but I would just say, well, I'm okay. I'm not gonna lie. It's a little toxic, but it is toxicity in a way that, I feel like everybody could relate to, because I'm not even just gonna put it on men and how men are toxic. I think that women can identify with his music too, because they have been just as toxic. Like, I feel like everybody has those moments where they played with people's hearts. They, may have led people on, longer than they should have, or they just were emotionally unavailable. All the workings and the knowings of a toxic person. And I understand that while it may not be right, I think it's very realistic to assume that somebody can identify with this. And so Brent was literally the prince, the, crown king of this type of music. Of course, outside of other people who had subtle toxicity, because let's not act like, rest in peace D'Angelo and, Donnell Jones, somebody where he want to be. Like, that was toxic too. It was just done in a different way. It was done in a more subtle way. It was done in a more skittery dee, like it was put a little more vocal on it, so we didn't really think it was that bad. But if you really listen to the lyrics, those were toxic songs too. But anyway, yeah, because that Where I Want to Be album, that is a no skip. But anyway, back to Brent. Brent is one of the ones that I feel like every girl has dated him in some capacity. Either you dated him, your sister dated him, your homegirl dated him, or somebody, your roommate dated him in college. Like, everybody knows a Brent. And I just think that, he had this reputation for so long of being this certain type of artist. However, I will say this. This last album that he came out with is titled Icon, and it came out this year, a couple weeks ago, actually. And I was pleasantly surprised by the content of this album. You don't hear too many people talking about it if you're not a diehard Brent Faiyaz fan, but I'm very, very proud of the growth that he has shown on this album. Again, we talking about Wasteland a couple years ago was quote unquote, peak Brent Faiyaz. That was an album that showed, while he may not have been as bad as he was in F the World, he was like a grown man toxic, right? So we loved Wasteland for what it was. We loved, Saunderson for what it was. We loved Larger Than Life for what it was. Like, those albums, they tried to play in different types of genres, but still had that Brent sound. But this Icon album, I feel like was a little bit, I think it was the most different that we've heard Brent. It was a little bit more mature, but I'm not even going to give a full album breakdown. Like, this is not necessarily a music podcast per se, but I want to highlight some of the features that made this album so different. That it actually ties into us as millennials just growing older, just experiencing life more, and just really kind of going beyond our quintessential toxic ways, okay? So there were a couple of songs that stood out to me that made me think about even just my own dating history. Like, you ever had that boyfriend or girlfriend, because again, this can go either way, that essentially you knew that person was a womanizer or a, mananizer. I don't even know the terminology for a woman who just run through them. But I think a person who was emotionally unavailable, or really just had an idea of, let's just have a good time. Let's not put a title on it. Let's just, have some fun, and, whatever happens, whatever doesn't. Like, those type of people who were necessarily, I like to call them in the wind type of people, where you really couldn't depend on them for that emotional solid clarity and emotional fulfillment, but they were there. They were there to add some excitement into your life, so that way you felt alive for a moment. You knew deep down that they didn't have anything for you that you really needed. But in that moment, you felt like they gave you what you needed, which was a feeling of validation, a feeling of excitement, and even just almost a little bit of that anxiety, knowing if you don't think that they're going to be around or not. I just described literally a demon. However, I understand that everybody kind of goes through those phases where, not everybody, let me not generalize, because I don't think that everybody does do these things. But I feel like a large amount of people that I know, including myself, you may have entertained a person who wasn't in your best interest, but you did it anyway, just because of what they presented to you, or just because the fun and the sensations that they brought into your life. And so, in that essence, they may even just trip and fall into being a boyfriend or a girlfriend, right? You may have, actually grown a connection and found out that your guys have something common outside of just the fun and the excitement. Just like with Brent, over time, he started to understand what he has done. Even just the Wrong Faces video itself, it shows that he still has that bounce. He still has that walk. He still has that arrogance about him that draws women to him, right? He shows himself to be a person that's highly sought after on the beach. People are frolicking and having fun. Women are beautiful. But there's somebody who might have his heart to the point where he sees the women that he normally would have stopped and actually pursued and talked to. But in this moment, you see the hesitation in his face, like, I guess, I could, but I won't, and it's only one thing that will make a person like that think like that. right? Either one, he's down bad on his luck or just not mentally in that space, or two, which is the highly likely part, that somebody has captured his heart. Somebody has made him pause to say, I just don't want to mess this up. I'm not even going to do it. I ain't even going to take that chance, because whether they feel like that person at home is a better choice or they're afraid to lose that person, it causes them to hesitate on their toxic ways, or on their pursuit of somebody else. And so, for the first time, we're actually seeing Brent Faiyaz be considerate. For the first time, we're actually seeing a person who's known to be selfish in their emotions, selfish in their desire or their lack of discipline, in a sense of just not being able to be monogamous or just a solid individual for somebody else. We're seeing this in real time for the first time. I can't tell you not one song, probably since Sonder, that you hear Brent Faiyaz, really check himself and say, you know what, I'm not going to do it. I could, but I'm just not, because I know that I don't want to mess up something that I already have. I think that's growth. Okay, I think that that's growth, but it also shows you too that after years of toxicity, after years of messing with women's heart, now the tables have turned. The tables have turned when you have someone who has played the field for so long, and now somebody has captured their heart, and they have a crippling fear. A crippling fear that karma might present itself and that they do the same thing to them that they have done to other people. So what does that tell you? What does that even mean? So some of these songs just showed me that people know exactly what they're doing. Even the ones that we give so much grace and excuses for, or even just years of therapy to get over, we always gave them the benefit of the doubt to say, well, maybe because of in their childhood this happened, or maybe because of this and that this happened, or he really didn't mean it, or she really didn't, see it, and she, all the excuses in the whole wide world, because maybe in the past they saw love as fleeing, or just they didn't believe in it. But then when somebody comes around and shows them what it's like, when it shows them a different piece of them, that's something that they're like, okay, what is this? And so now you have a person really trying to do the right thing, but they maybe still be fearful of messing it up, because you never worked that muscle. You never worked the muscle of being a person that's considerate of other people, that's monogamous, that's not a liar, that's truthful or genuine, that puts other people first. You may not have been that person before. So now all of a sudden you have a situation in front of you that calls for these things. And then now you have to really kind of stand outside of yourself and try something that you've never done before. That may not be the easiest thing to do. So I appreciate Brent's vulnerability in this conversation that he's having with himself, throughout this album, because I feel like he is feeling the joy, but also a little bit of anxiety about this new form that he's taking up as a grown man. Because at the end of the day, something has to change. Something has to give, right? We can't just live in the same space and keep making the same mistakes and building on this bad karma throughout our whole lives. We just can't do that. Fortunately, we just have to grow up. And so what happens when the womanizer becomes infatuated? It's so hilarious to look at. I've seen this happen before, actually. So back in college, it was this guy who was literally sleeping with everyone under the sun. Like, every time you turn around, you're like, oh, her too? Her too? And so it just really became just like almost like a laugh. Like, oh, who has not, So one day you see him literally lock hands with this woman, after a football game, and everybody's like, I know he's not. I know he is not locking hands. And you could tell love was in his face. And it was just astounding to see, him switch gears to a whole completely different person just because he was in love for the first time. Like, we didn't see this happening. And so, I just think that the tables can turn. And will people take you seriously? Who knows? But I think that what we can't do is, not allow people the opportunity to experience what love is. I think it's very selfish. I think it's very almost like sadistic for us to say, okay, just because of what you've done, you don't deserve love. Nah, if they just grifting or, playing a part just to kind of be manipulating or whatever the case may be, that's different. I'm talking about real, genuine change. I'm talking about real, genuine, just, new direction, becoming a better person. And then honestly and truly, if you're a spiritual person, that's what we all strive to do, essentially, right? It's to just be better versions of ourselves. I just don't feel, it doesn't sit right with me to say that about a person, because I think love should be afforded to everyone in this lifetime. I think it's a beautiful thing. I think it's a luxury because a lot of people aren't able to, experience love throughout their life. So if you're able to find it, shout out to you. But I think also too, though, I do believe that karma is real. And if you have something good in front of you, I think you have to do a bit of growth and healing to be able to appreciate it and to be able to sustain it. Because if not, you may have a likelihood of falling back into your old ways, or messing it up, or self-sabotaging the situation because you don't feel like you actually deserve it. So I think is a lot that comes into play when we're talking about love in a healthy relationship. The kicker, though, honestly, which is kind of interesting, is when the person that the womanizer falls in love with turns out to be a player too. Oh, oh, it breaks their heart. Oh, and then now we have a bigger problem. Don't let the person who was literally out here breaking hearts and throwing care to the wind fall in love, and that person is a user or a, womanizer or manizer or whatever themselves. Oh man. And then now that further perpetuates the point that the person was making for being out there in the first place. They're like, well, I knew this was a hoax. I knew this was a scam. I knew I shouldn't have never done it. That's why I didn't do it in the past. So now you have built this monster into being a bigger monster because their heart was broken. Oh man, that's the worst. I've seen it. It is the terrible thing to witness. But on this album, you do see that, Brent has starting to develop feelings for a person, but understand that they may be emotionally unattached too. So what do you do with those feelings? Regardless of, what you've done in the past, you're still a person. You still have feelings. So, what happens to those feelings in that situation? I don't know. I feel bad for the guy. Because honestly, we ain't heard much from him. So he may already be in love already, like in real life. And that's why he kind of been out of the picture. He's kind of been laying low. He even dropped this album, posted a few pictures on Instagram, and then went right back into hiding. I hadn't seen not one tour announcement. I hadn't seen not one interview or anything, regarding this album, which is kind of uncommon, I would say, when it comes to, people dropping albums today. In today's society, we really want that full rollout. Like after the Clips did their phenomenal rollout in 2025, we really like to see people's album kind of marketing. We like to see them do interviews. We like to see them do magazines and stuff like that. So when Brent just said, hey, I'm dropping an album, and then just kind of went back into hiding, it just kind of further perpetuates his mystery, but also kind of like, well, what is he doing? What does he have going on? Has he made a whole family and we don't know about it? Has he gotten married and we don't know about it? I don't know, but check out his album. I really do like Have To. I love Wrong Faces. I love Vanilla Sky. I just think, it's a really solid project. But I also just am kind of like, it's not sad, but I could see the growth in him, and I can see him growing into be a grown man. And I don't ever want an artist to just stay the same just based off of my own nostalgia. Like, I think that that's selfish of me to do that. I think artists should be afforded the opportunity to grow. But at the same time, just as a just music person, I also just appreciate the era that Brent had for me, especially like I said during the F the World mixtape with Trust You and with Brent Away. Like I could put those songs on today and it just takes me right back to where I was at that time. So those are always a be classics to me. Those will always be in rotation for me. But I am proud of just a little bit of change in Brent's sound. So anyway, check it out. It's called Icon, and it is available. And it's just a different vibe for him. So kudos to him. Now, I will say this. I am late recording this too because I was watching the Oscars, and I'm so happy to hear that Michael B. Jordan just won for Best Actor. I'm a music head, but I'm also a movie buff, and I'm so happy to see the winners tonight. Sinners, Ryan Coogler winning for Best Screenplay, Michael B. Jordan winning for Best Actor, also Autumn winning for Best Cinematographer. She's the first woman to ever win for Best Cinematographer. So I think she is just absolutely amazing, and the work that she did on Sinners was, monumental. And I hope to work with her one day. I hope to, be in the same conversation eventually when it comes to her one day. Even just meeting her, I think would be an honor. So I'm putting that out there, speaking into existence. But it all goes back to, just growth. And we just seen Michael B. Jordan just grow up into an amazing artist, into an amazing actor, and just to see him win, I'm just so happy about that. But anyways, until next time, you cannot manifest the life you feel like you don't deserve. So create the life that you want and look to the sky for grace. Bye bye. For all that life has in store.